Bloomington, Indiana.
Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
Another one!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30. He's going to go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Works down by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is Tuesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio with you as always. I'm Jim Coyle. Kevin Brockway joining me from CNH Papers. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm seeing this close up, and it's a face only a mother could love, right?
Yeah, I hear you, brother. Welcome in Indiana Sports Beat Radio, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Southern Stone Restaurant. Make sure you stop by at the corner of Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington. It's where you can find the Indiana men's basketball show, Inside Men's Basketball, with Mike Woodson. Had it last night, 7:05. Tomorrow night is the last Tom Allen show of the year. As football is coming to a close, most would say, thankfully, Kevin, painful season. As the bucket game approaches for the Hoosiers this Saturday up in West Lafayette, just being honest, it doesn't look good for Indiana. There's just nothing. You're like, wow. Normally, you think that there's a shot. I just don't. I don't see, unless, first of all, I think they have to start Grant Grimmel. Why? There is no damn reason in the world to not start Grant Grimmel. Let's just get it started here now.
Hope you find lightning in the bottle like the Jets did for 1 week with Mike White, right? When they beat the Bengals a few weeks ago. But they're talking about possibly getting Tywan Mullen or Stephen Carr back. But yeah, still, it looks pretty bleak. And, this would be the first winless season in Big Ten play since Kevin Wilson's first season in 2011. And I mean, that was a rebuild from Bill Lynch. I mean, this is Tom Allen's, fifth year. And, he kind of rode the wave of those 2 seasons, but it dropped quickly. And, I think the big question was why. Obviously, injuries have played a huge role. Maybe some of the transfers they brought in that they thought were going to be good weren't really as good. Maybe guys like Wap Fillier and Stevie Scott were better than we thought, or Simon Stepaniak on the offensive line, or Harry Kreider, because obviously there's been a drop-off. And the development, which I thought was Tom Allen's strong suit this year, we didn't see guys develop to the level that they had in prior years.
Yeah, and that was a little surprising, to be honest with you. And that's going to be where changes have to be made. And that's another question. That's the next question. Changes are going to have to come without question. And that's something that has been hard for Tom Allen to do because a lot of his hires are based on loyalty and people that he knows. And so that means firing them would be difficult for him, but it's got to happen. And we've seen from all these other teams, head coaches getting fired. Dan Mullen from Florida getting the axe. Didn't he win the division a couple of times?
He won it once, yeah, and it was a quick fall from grace from him in Gainesville. But the big issue with Dan was also the recruiting. And you probably saw that in the talent level of his team this year as he continued to lose each of Jim McElwain's classes, the talent level got worse and worse. I mean, Kyle Trask, Darius Toney, those guys were all recruited by Jim McElwain. So I think that, people got a little concerned about the lack of talent and the talent level that was there, along with the momentum of the program losing all these games. But it'll be interesting to see. Billy Napier is a guy from Louisiana that they're talking about. If I'm Florida, I take a pass at Jeff Brom just to see if he's interested, because I think he's a great offensive mind. I think he would do a great job down there with that talent, that speed. He would be unbelievable down there.
I don't.
You think he's waiting on Notre Dame? A lot of people think he's waiting on Notre Dame. You're not the only one that I've talked to about
Yeah.
that.
But the thing is, and I've always thought that, but Brian Kelly's not going anywhere anytime soon.
There is a rumor about Brian Kelly to USC, believe it or not. There's some rumblings about that too. So if that happens, then Notre Dame opens up. Because Notre Dame is one of those jobs that ages people, and people. Brian Kelly is a little bit of an anomaly. He's been there for 10 years. Usually guys.
That's usually the max.
8 or 10 years. What? Yeah, usually guys after 8 or 10 years.
But he just signed a new. Didn't he just sign a new?
He did sign a new extension. But what if USC comes with a bigger boatload of money? That's what I would wonder. Would be interesting.
Kyle says that Jeff Brohm was on the hot seat before the season began. In a way. But they had just weird. It had just been weird at Purdue because I think most people know that Jeff Brohm is a better coach than what was going on at Purdue. Yeah. So, and this year they're a game out right now, the division lead. So they're fine.
Yeah. If they beat Indiana, and all indications are they will. 8-4, that'll be their first 8-win season at Purdue since 2007. I think the guy can coach. I think the issues were, the lack of attention to detail the previous 2 years to defense and special teams, and he finally brought in a really good defensive coordinator in Brad Lambert, the guy from Marshall, who was a Broyles finalist last year, and he became more involved in the defensive meetings also. So he is learning to become a CEO coach, Jeff Brohm, as opposed to, when he was just this offensive guru when he started.
How often do we see that? Go back to Kevin Wilson, phenomenally offensive mind, but Indiana was winning and losing games 48-46 or 52-48. There wasn't that attention to detail and defense like you talked about. Then he brought Tom Allen in, and then that was about to change. And of course, Kevin Wilson got the axe. And then now you have a guy who is completely defensive minded and, for lack of a better word, offensively not in touch. That's not Tom Allen's strong suit. Offense, as a matter of fact.
2019, you had the great offensive coordinator in Kalen DeBoer, and they won 8 games and had Tennessee on the ropes in the Gator Bowl. If they have a little bit of a better kicker,
they should have won that. Yeah,
they could have had a 9-win season, and that was Kalen DeBoer, a Broyles Award finalist, as an offensive coordinator, and Tom Allen, and his defensive mind with Kane Womack. That was a team in 2019 that was really I think you had everything there in place. And last year, 2020, I think Nick Sheridan rode the coattails a little bit of Penix having a great year. And this year, we're seeing that without Penix, it's just been really hard for him to, be creative enough to overcome, the injuries that they have as a play caller.
Tim says that Brohm will go nowhere unless all the stars align and he goes to Louisville. But that's not true. He had the chance to go to Louisville and he turned them down. If he wanted to go to Louisville, he could have already done that. That was a lateral move.
Jeff Brohm in the SEC would be interesting. Or how about LSU? Or how about
and he flirted with Tennessee, remember?
Yep. Yeah.
I wondered about that. I'm like, oh gosh, man, you put him down in Tennessee with all that money. Tennessee would have killed to have Jeff Brohm, and I'm surprised. I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised they didn't open up the checkbook. If they didn't have all the dysfunction that was going on at that time going on and had a better the former coach is not still the AD, is he? Philip Fulmer?
Danny White, but he's brought in Josh Heupel, who he had at UCF, and I think that's working out okay. They're making progress. Heupel is another really good offensive mind, so they like the way things are going there.
Yeah, when they had Philip Fulmer in there, you had a guy, I don't think he knew what he was doing as an AD. He was just, I'm Philip Fulmer. I'm going to come in here to the rescue and blah, 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 blah. Don't know what they're doing and just kind of mucked it all up. But yeah, they could have had him maybe. But also Jeff Brohm probably just used that as a leverage tool to get more money for wherever he was ultimately going to end up.
Yeah, no, and he's got a nice contract at Purdue, but the bar has been raised even since he was extended 3 years ago. I mean, he's making what, 4.95 million now. I mean, what if somebody offers him 7 or 8?
And we've seen the prices certainly go up for college coaches, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I think for Indiana, this is just a total, tear down, and kind of now you're in kind of rebuilding mode. Like Tom Allen said in his press conference yesterday, we have to just basically reevaluate every position room that they have on their team, kind of going forward for the future.
Well, and that's something we've been hearing for a number of weeks now, which is no kidding. I don't want to be a smart aleck, but no joke. Of course you do. And it's just like when I asked about a potential change in personnel happening, if you'd even thought of that. I already knew the answer, but it's just a question you have to ask. And no, they're not going to look at any changes whatsoever before the end of the season. We see a lot of teams that are making changes now, getting ahead of the game. Does Indiana run the risk by waiting of not getting someone they want, or is this kind of an indication that potentially Dylan McCullough could be moved up to OC if Nick Sheridan were to be let go?
I mean, that's possible. But why not go out and get a really adept play caller? That would be my question.
And Dylan McCullough, has he ever been a coordinator?
No. That's the thing. I don't know. And, do you want to do that again? I mean, and do you want to put Nick Sheridan in that position where, where do you want to go in that position where you have a novice play caller like Nick Sheridan was, and we're seeing in 2 years, what the result of that?
No, he has not been a coordinator. So that's an issue, because everybody keeps asking that. And I'm like, and that's the thing. And I keep harping on this. Yes, I agree. You need a guy that is the guy. And that's why 2 years ago, when this position was open and this position was red hot, I said, go out and get that guy. Go out and get that hot guy. Keep it rolling. And they did exactly the opposite. Went out and got the lukewarm guy and threw some lukewarm water on it. And now it's lukewarm. And
you could have had a guy like Joe Moorhead. You could have had there were a bunch of guys out there at that time, as I recall, that were really adept and experienced play callers. How about bringing back Cam Cameron as an analyst, as an offensive analyst?
You know what? I think that would be perfect, because he's out of the game, to my knowledge. He's just out in San Diego, chilling. And as an offensive mind, that is where he excelled. He did not have success as a head coach, but as an OC, he was as good as it got. And man, he lit people up, and on all levels, the pro level, the top collegiate level, didn't matter. He knows what he's doing offensively. Kind of like a Thad Matta position.
Yeah.
But or just get the coordinator you need and get a head coach or a former head coach that I hate to say, not having been a head coach before, he's still learning on the job, and having very little to no offensive experience makes it even all that the more difficult, because you've got an inexperienced Nick Sheridan in a position that you don't have experience in. So who's going to offer suggestions there? You don't have any experience in the offensive coordinating position at all, or any around it.
Bring in Dan Mullen. Let him run the spread here. Why not?
I mean, see, that's the thing. I think they need to do something. They have to think outside of the box, and that's the problem with Indiana. They rarely, if ever, do. And it's kind of you stay in the box, and so you keep getting the same type of thing that you've had. But I think that is really the pressure's on him. He's getting paid now, in Tom Allen. So, and getting paid at a Big Ten salary. So he's going to have to make a Big Ten decision. Hey, we got plenty more coming up. Of course, the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox, and BTN is going to join us. Plenty to talk. I'm sure he's going to love to talk about his Steelers. Man, they are driving people nuts. Hey, we got that and plenty more when we come back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our great friends at Southern Stone Restaurant, located at the corner of Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Not bad.
Thanks for adjusting to our time change, Mike.
Are we on Jim Standard Time now? Is that how it works?
No, it's not me.
It's me standard time. I had a job change, and so
okay.
Earlier.
Trust me, Mike. I don't want to get up any earlier than possible.
The game is Duke.
What do you say, Kevin?
The coach from the Citadel laps on court in a game against Duke.
You cut out a second
Basketball coach.
ago.
Remember the scores tonight?
Did you see Illinois went down big again, too? Speaking of college basketball.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize Kofi Coburn was back. I thought he was still out when I saw the score.
Yeah, that was some wild and wacky stuff. Rutgers lost to Lafayette. Wow.
That's right. And they hadn't won a game yet, which is crazy. Saw people calling it
UCLA Gonzaga?
Steve Michael's career.
When is the UCLA Gonzaga game?
It's tonight.
It is. Okay.
Gonzaga won by like 50 points last night.
So that's why I was wondering, why did UCLA play a game yesterday and they're playing Gonzaga today?
They're in some sort of classic or something.
Yeah, it's like an MTE, but like a really weird one where they both played essentially bye games, but not bye games. And then they played
They played Bellarmine and they beat them by 13, yeah.
Yeah, they I think that's a strange deal where, why not play the big game first so you could focus fully on that, and then the other one, just have it be a one-off.
Concerned about the Big Ten, man? A lot of bad non-conference losses.
I'm not sure concern is the appropriate word because I'm not sure it's reparable in the short amount of time that they have.
Yeah.
15 seconds, Jim.
At any place you podcast or on this station each weekday. If we're not on the station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday. Of course, Kevin Brockway from CNHI joins me, but now joined by Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, BTN, Fox, man of all. Too many hats, many hats. And I'll get the painfulness out of the way. Man, those Steelers, it was a fun game to watch. They've been involved in some fun games. I guess when you have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, if you're not in the lead, their games are always going to be fun because they have a shot, and which is a great thing to have a guy or a team that usually always has a shot because there's a lot of teams that aren't like that.
Well, they got back into that game not just with Roethlisberger playing better, but also a blocked punt, holding San Diego on downs deep in the Chargers' own territory. Excuse me, L.A. I'll never get used to that one.
No.
They should have just kept the name San Diego and then moved it to L.A. anyway. So the rest of us would have a shot. I think that the fact that they got back into that game said a lot for the fact that their coaches wouldn't allow them to give up on it. But they didn't have enough guys. I mean, taking the field without Watt, without Minka Fitzpatrick, they're all pro safety. Without Joe Hayden, their best cornerback, and they're already depleted on the defensive line to an absurd degree. There just wasn't any way they could be themselves, and so ultimately, it was disappointing to see how they lost, but I wasn't surprised that they lost in those circumstances.
And this time of year, everyone's scrapping. But how about the Colts? What a gigantic win for them! But more importantly. And on Thursdays, Matt Taylor joins us, and I can't wait to talk to him about Jonathan Taylor. Man, I know Derrick Henry went down, so maybe it won't be a sweep, but he's going to end up winning the rushing title for the NFL, I think. But and there's talk now, which of a running back, but MVP talk. But of course, that's hard when you're on a team that is not doing well like the Colts aren't. They'd have to make a hell of a run, I think, for that to really come to fruition. But he's having a great year.
Yeah, well, I there's nobody out there who's having that kind of year, though. One of the things about this NFL season that I think is being under discussed is that it's different. That instead of the analysts, the louder analysts, the more prominent analysts saying, look, there is no team out there. They keep searching. Oh, it must be Tennessee. It must be this team. It must be that team. Every time somebody wins 2 games in a row, okay, they're the team we've been looking for. Instead of just acknowledging that team's not there. I mean, it's not there. There is no team that can overwhelm the rest of the NFL. There's no team that's not a couple of injuries away, like the Steelers on Sunday, from being a completely different team. And I think that's one of the things that maybe is being under discussed about where the NFL is now, where it's gotten to. That it's a less brutal game than maybe it was 15 years ago. They've taken a lot out, which is good. A lot out that belonged out. But it's still, I think it's actually maybe even more dangerous now, because the players keep getting faster, they keep getting stronger, they keep getting bigger. And so it's harder to stay healthy. And that inability to stay healthy is impacting teams' results in a way that maybe it didn't happen 15 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, maybe even 5 or 10 years ago. And that's what you're seeing. A team like the Colts, could they make a run? Sure, why not? I mean, I don't know if they will. If they do, though, I find it ridiculous that the MVP has to be a quarterback. I mean, okay, the Cy Young Award winner better be a pitcher, because it's kind of what the award is for.
Yeah.
But the MVP award is for the player who makes the biggest impact. It's not, I mean, although the quarterback is the most important position, you have to be able to see broader than that. In a lot of cases, the quarterback is a product of everything that's around him. The offensive coordinator, the weapons, the offensive line. He just happens to make the throws that are wide open in some circumstances because everything is there for him.
Mike, he also has to process the information quickly and do that.
I realize that.
That's why there are Tom Brady's in the world, and that's why there are other quarterbacks. I mean, there's so many.
But I mean, a couple of years ago, Matt, it was I think 2016, Ezekiel Elliott's rookie year with the Cowboys. He completely revolutionized their team. And Matt Ryan, who's a good, solid quarterback, came into an offense that was wired up for whoever was standing there to be really good. I mean, any one of 10 quarterbacks could have done what Matt Ryan did in 2016. But because he was the quarterback on this dynamic offense, he gets MVP. It was Elliott. Elliott was the best player in the league that year, or at least the most important player in the league. And I think you can make an argument if the Colts continue this course that Taylor is the most important player in the league.
Well, the Heisman
If they
has
don't,
become that too. It's become a quarterback award, although, last year obviously was a little different, but most years the Heisman has become a quarterback award too. And it's,
And I think that's a mistake.
It is. That one drives me insane because that one just goes to the best player on the best team virtually every year. And that one has really driven me nuts just for that very reason. And especially Jonathan Taylor is a great example. It reminds me of, I hate to use Anthony Thompson, but when you're on a team that is not succeeding, but you're doing things at the highest level, you're doing it through harder circumstances to me. So that means your achievement stands out even more to me. So I don't understand why people can't see that and reward that because that's how I see it. If you're doing things like, oh my gosh, Jonathan Taylor he's doing it on a team that is struggling to get to the playoffs, that is not going through teams like a hot knife through butter. They're scrambling and to get to this point. So to me, it makes it that much more incredible.
Yeah, I'm a believer in, I do think that your team has to have success, but I mean, I'm not a believer in a team, in an MVP coming from a losing team, but a team that rises up to the playoffs in a difficult division. I mean, they're in a difficult division. Well, no, excuse me, they're in a difficult conference. But they're not in a difficult division. But a team that rises up to the playoffs, I think that certainly is worthy of consideration. I don't know that, I think Kyler Murray early in the year before he got hurt looked like that kind of player, perhaps. But I don't know that there's been an NFL quarterback this year who's been so outstanding that he's risen above the crowd. So we'll see how it plays out. Like I said, obviously the Colts have to continue to play really well, but I think that's at least he should be considered.
And the Colts are trying to make a run, man. They are working hard at it. And if it hadn't have been, there were three things you can look at. 0-3 start, of course, got them. And then they had losses to the Titans that was within their grasp, and the Ravens that was within their
grasp. Threw that one away.
Boy, man, and it's going to hurt. But either one of those, and they're probably in a pretty decent position. But they're still okay. They may end up making it, surprisingly. But it'll be fun to watch as the season progresses. Last night, the Buccaneers went through the Giants, which I was surprised. I didn't think that Eli was going to do the Peyton and Eli game with the Giants, but they did do that. And I didn't see much of it because by the time I got to it, the game wasn't very, very good. And they weren't really, they weren't having as much fun as they normally have. So I didn't get to see much of it last night. Have you seen much of that, Mike, or any of it?
I've not watched a minute of it.
It's worth watching because they bring on guests. They'll have guests that joins them, and Peyton, he's Peyton. He's sitting there cracking jokes and cracking on and getting cracked on, but at the same time, he's not missing a thing that's going on the field. And when somebody does something, as soon as that joke's over, he goes right into, "Hey, did you see this? This guy did blah blah blah," and just carves it up. And I love it. But it's pretty comical. It's a lot more fun than just listening to the broadcast, I think.
Well, it's not really my thing. If I want to see Peyton crack jokes, I'm all for that. He's got a great sense of humor. If I want to see football, I'll watch football. I'm not one for mixing the two. That's not my thing. So I haven't watched it, and I will not probably.
I wonder what the ratings have been. They've surely picked up ratings, but I wonder how much it has cut off of the normal broadcast.
From what I've seen, they're getting about, I'm going to say about 15% of the normal audience, maybe 20. I don't think 20, about 15, the numbers that I've seen. Usually the NFL game comes in around 13.5 million, and then they added 1.5 million, 1.8 million, something like that. So I don't know the exact percentages on that, but is something like 15%. So that's kind of where they are. And so, good for ESPN. They found another, they found a way to continue to monetize NFL and Monday Night Football. And if it's your thing, I mean, I don't argue with it. Like I said, I love Peyton. I still think there's a sitcom with his name on it somewhere that somebody should be writing. He's got brilliant comedic timing. But that's just not, I don't like to combine those two things.
No, the absolute most favorite thing, or two most favorite things I've ever seen Peyton do is when he did the Peyton Places with David Letterman. If you have not seen that, they're up at Ball State, and as they're sitting in the stands while the team is practicing, and they're deciding, okay, let's come up with some rules changes. Football's got a little stale, so they start coming up with potential rule changes. And it's absolutely hilarious. One of them is to raise the goalpost at intervals, and they've got a fork or whatever. They have this goalpost so high in the air to kick the extra points. But it's just those two together. They didn't miss a beat. The time, like you said, the timing. He's just he's got great comedic timing. But oh gosh, now the other one was the Saturday Night Live bit. He's got the kids out on there, and they do a video.
It may be the funniest thing in the history of Saturday Night Live, which is saying something. Yeah. That I never stopped laughing at that. He was so brilliant in that.
Oh,
it's why I really do think that if he ever wanted to act, he could do it. A better actor than Bob Uecker. Not that Bob was a bad one, but I think he would do an even better job than Bob did.
But Bob just played Bob most of the time.
Belvedere, he was great, yeah.
Which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, back in that's another thing. The characters. Speaking of that, Bob Uecker, the characters behind the mic, they've pretty much disappeared. The guys that could be characters that were characters, that has kind of gone away, and that stinks, man.
Well, speaking of characters behind the mic, that's a nice little transition. Tonight, 10 Eastern, Gonzaga versus UCLA, number 1 versus number 2 in Las Vegas. And probably the ultimate character behind the mic, Dick Vitale, will be there to end the game. Dick is a friend and a wonderful, generous man. And, I consider myself very privileged to be his friend, but not unique in being his friend. He is a friend to many, one of the most generous people that I've ever encountered. And he's undergoing chemotherapy. He's in the process. I mean, he's not undergoing it literally right now, but he's in the process of chemotherapy. I think he's had 3 or 4 treatments to this point. I believe this is a week off for him because he usually has it on Mondays. And that's why he's able to travel to Vegas to call that game. And he's thrilled. I know he's excited about it. The doctors have said they want him out there. And so he's going to have a chance to call maybe one of the best college basketball games of the year. So another reason to tune in tonight to that particular college basketball game in Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. It is to have him back because he's such a part of college basketball. And then to have this matchup, UCLA is playing well. Gonzaga is playing well already. So this is a rare early season matchup of really good teams that are playing really well. And man, I'm looking forward to this. I'm here for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be terrific. That it's interesting. They were 1-2 coming into the year, and they've kind of held up to that. Gonzaga had to beat Texas at home. UCLA had to beat Villanova at home, so they were both home games, but still very difficult, both against top 10 opposition. And then, of course, they'll play one another tonight. Unlike some of the teams from the Big Ten that were preseason top 10 that have struggled to this point. And really need, I mentioned before, Kevin, when we were off the air, that I'm not sure that they have that they can make the progress in time that they need to make it, because they've got you got several teams involved in the Thanksgiving type tournaments, and then next week you have the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and they have to undo some of the damage that they did in the Gavitt games that happened perhaps last night in the Hall of Fame Classic with Illinois losing to Cincinnati. There have been some surprises. Some of the things that have happened, I can come up with an easy explanation. Michigan was expected to be significant because they brought back 3 solid players from last year, 1 great player, and then brought in a lot of talent. That talent is taking time to mesh. In the case of Caleb Houston, it's taking time to transition to Division I basketball. He's really struggled the last 3 games. In the case of Illinois, Andre Curbelo, the point guard, who I really had great expectations of this year, has gotten a little bit. He's gotten out what one might say over his skis. He's trying to do too much. He's trying to be something that he's not, and they need to get him back to being the dynamic playmaker he is, and not focus so significantly on scoring. I think the Kofi Coburn suspension was silly, and it seemed at the time like it might only cost them the Marquette game. But I think now in retrospect, it's cost them some significant early season development that they needed as a team. Opening game, fine. 3 games for what happened was ridiculous. And I continue to struggle with some of the decisions that are made by their committees and to a lesser extent by the staff at the NCAA.
Mike, let's not underestimate in the case of Michigan and Illinois. I mean, Franz Wagner was a lottery pick for MVPs in the Big Ten. I mean, those are 2 big pieces off of those 2 teams that you don't necessarily fill right away. And that happens in college basketball, but I think those were 2 pretty significant pieces that both those teams lost. Yeah,
but not everybody that lost people from last year is struggling in the same way. I mean, the teams that we've seen play the best have been, like Purdue, a team that came back relatively intact. But not everybody that has had to retool is struggling at the level that they are. I mean, a lot of like Alabama. I mean, Alabama lost, I think, 2 first-round picks, multiple big-time. I think 1 first-round pick, a freshman, and then they lost John Petty. They lost their top forward, and they've played fine. I think it's more complicated than that. I think it's just, like I said, Caleb Houston's come in the last 3 games. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's basically been 1 for 9 or 2 for 8 from the field. And they need that guy to score. If he can't score, they don't have enough offense. They lost great players, but the way college basketball is now, if you're not transitioning quickly, you're going to struggle. So you either have to say, okay, here's the deal. We know we're losing all these guys. We're losing Isaiah Livers. We're losing Franz Wagner. So we're not playing anybody for the first couple of weeks of the season. And we'll figure it out. And then once we figured it out, we'll start playing people. You have to, you have to be ready to go. If you're going to play these teams, you got to be ready to play them.
Hey, we got plenty more college basketball to get to. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News is with us, as is Kevin Brockway. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
The baseball season.
Man, the Big Ten is more up for grabs. Not up for grabs. Purdue's at the top, but it may be more up for grabs than people thought. Michigan,
I'm not sure. I think that I think right now Purdue looks like they're gonna, like they're way ahead of everybody.
I've got them circled as number 1 in the Big Ten.
I had them in the offseason as our number 3 team, and then I started to worry about their shooting. And I think they worried about their shooting too, because they changed the lineup at point guard. They put Isaiah Thompson in there instead. And he has shot the basketball really well. And Sasha's a player who went through 2 years where he couldn't make a shot in a big game, a road game, a big game, really struggled. And then now he's played three big games right now, something like that. And he's been great in every one of them, or great in a couple and significant in the third. I think that if they continue to make shots at that level, they're going to be the best team in the league.
Mike, did you watch Canada and Mexico in the snow last week?
Yeah, I did. I did. I finished my my article on the U.S. Jamaica game, and then watched the second half of that. It was pretty amazing.
It was nearly another Dos a Cero Canadian edition.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about the U.S. doing that in January, the January window, and I think that it misses the entire point, because U.S. doesn't need to do that. They need to play in good conditions, because that's who they are. They need to play pretty, and that's what makes them good. They don't have to. It's not an advantage for them to play, on a bad field, or in an ice storm or whatever. Mm-hmm. They need to play in good conditions if they can.
Yeah.
Keegan Murray's playing well for Iowa, huh?
Oh, he's been great. I mean, I really liked him, but I didn't know that it was going to happen like this. I mean, that's an example of, Iowa, a team that a lot of us wrote off. I mean, if he keeps playing like that, and everybody else keeps playing like they're playing, I mean, Rutgers can't get any spark at all. I mean, they're just, they're just struggling so much to just get any pace. I did not anticipate them struggling to get offense at the level that they are.
Here we go.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday. Plenty to talk about college basketball. Indiana back in action tonight, taking on Jackson State. They've looked fairly good through their first 4 games. Mike, the defense has looked good. It's not been complete. Coach Woodson's still looking for a complete game out of his squad. They have gotten leads multiple times and kind of caved back in a little bit. They got a little lazy the other night, but man, still holding a team to 20% shooting, although it's not exactly, a Big Ten team, but the defensive effort and the defensive change and philosophy is obvious to the naked eye.
Yeah, what I talked about before about scheduling and how if you're going to be building a team, there's no need to prove yourself on November 9th or 12th or whatever. If you're building, you go ahead and build. And that's what Indiana's done. It's been smart. Now they're going to have to play in the ACC Big Ten Challenge and step up in class and all that. And so that they'll have to, they'll have to be ready for that. But they haven't forced themselves to try more than they are ready to try. And so I think that's been really smart about the way things have gone. I mean, the St. John's game was a good, solid game. It was good that it was home. They didn't play great in the second half of that game, but they played well enough to beat a quality opponent. And then, and then they go back to the lab a little bit, try to work out some stuff. They still, I think that the most important thing that's happened so far is, for Xavier Johnson to play against a team that likes to muddy up the game or, get you going too fast. And that's kind of been a problem for him at times in his, earlier in his career. And that St. John's didn't have a lot of success with him in that sense. He played fine. And so I think they're in really good position, and they can be one of those teams that, although they've only contributed one significant win to the Big Ten's cause, they can look around and sort of smile quietly that a lot of other teams that were expected to be good in the first half of the league, Maryland losing to George Mason, Rutgers losing to Lafayette. We mentioned the Cincinnati loss, the Illinois and Marquette loss. The Marquette and Cincinnati loss for Illinois. Michigan not being successful. Indiana can sit there and say, hey, you know what? Maybe we can finish even higher than we thought. Maybe there's more out there. Let's keep grinding. Let's keep getting better. Let's keep working to incorporate the coach's vision. Because I'd say right now, with the way the league has developed over the first two weeks of the season, that Indiana can look at it and say, hey, if we hit our targets, we can be in this. I mean, they may not be able to reach Purdue's A level, but they can be in it. And if you're in it, then you're looking at an attractive seed and March and all that stuff.
Kevin?
I was going to say, I think the thing, the switching defense and the in-your-face, I think the fans really like that. They like the aggressiveness, and they're seeing guys diving on the floor. It is early. There are some bad teams. I mean, 27 turnovers against Louisiana, that's going to get you beat against a Big Ten team. That's an area where they've got to kind of shore things up, I think, with regards to the offense. But, listen, Mike Woodson told us in the beginning of the year that the defense was ahead of the offense, and the offense is going to be a work in progress. And it has been, to my naked eye, through these first 4 games. But they got a little bit of shooting in that Louisiana game, too. Parker Stewart finally hit some shots. Miller Kopp is a guy that they want to get going. And I think he's establishing a little depth, too, with that bench, and that second unit is playing pretty well.
Yeah, we've all seen Miller Kopp play for multiple years at Northwestern, and he's not just a good deep shooter. He's a good mid-range shooter as well. So the struggles he's having are difficult to understand, but I still believe that it's going to come out. It just needs to get comfortable. I think maybe comfortable with a different role. I mean, at Northwestern, he was going to play a lot no matter what because they didn't have anybody better than him as a scorer until Chase Adish came in last year. So I think that now fighting for minutes is probably something that's new to him in the way that he has to fight for minutes now. I mean, in the past, he had to play well enough to earn 30 minutes. I mean, they didn't have anybody else better than him, but he still had to play well enough to stay out there. Now he has to fight for every minute he gets. And I think that's probably having a little bit of an impact on his confidence. And he's got to, he can get that back. And if he does, as I said, he's not just a deep shooter. I mean, he's really good mid-range. And with some of the things that Mike's running offensively, that would be a real important weapon for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, shooting has been something that has been devoid of their attack for the last couple of years. And the other night, we've got to see a little taste of that with whether it was Parker Stewart busting out for 16 points, kind of breaking out of his shell a little bit. I think a big part of that was getting out from behind the 3-point line and just getting into a shooting rhythm, because he pump faked when he hit that first jumper, not the 3-pointer, but inside. He was so smooth. And then it's like there's just other parts of his game that can come to life. And I think that those guys are still finding that. But man, they look better each time out.
A lot of times the players or coaches will say, you just need to see the ball go through the rim. It could be as simple as a layup. It could be a free throw. You just need to see it go through the rim to start to believe that it's going to go through. And I think that happened for Parker, and it's a good sign for Indiana. He's somebody that we thought coming into the year between him and Kopp that they were going to fill a void that clearly existed in last year's team. And so you got Stewart to do it, so that it's possible for Kopp to follow. It's just a question of when.
Let's see. What else is I going to talk about? Oh, yeah. And talk about another, that's a perfect example of Christian Lander, not necessarily seeing the ball go through the hoop, just seeing the ball go where it needs to go for you. Everything was going, he just looked confident. He looked very much like he belonged on the floor. more like a leader with the ball in his hands as opposed to last year when he was more like a deer in headlights?
Yeah, I've talked about this with the gentleman I know who works in who worked in scouting, and he pointed out that the recent history, and this isn't, it's kind of a new thing. So the idea of rushing your graduation or advancing your graduation, whatever you want to call it, it's not really worked out for a lot of players. It's really been a struggle. You look at Devin Askew at Kentucky last year, really struggled as a freshman for the Wildcats. Go back a couple of years to Derek Thornton at I think that was 5 years ago or so at Duke. He rushed accelerated his graduation. He was rated a top 30 point guard in his class. He goes to Duke. He's supposed to basically take over for them at point guard. And it doesn't happen. He's not ready. And he ends up going, Derek Thornton ends up going to multiple colleges. He transfers to USC, he transfers to Boston College, and never really got himself back to being a significant player. At BC, on a mediocre to bad team, averaged 12.5 points a game his final season of college, but never really was, excelled. So I think that I'm not sure that that's a move that I would encourage players like that, especially in that position, to make. And so hopefully Christian winds up with a better outcome than Derek, that Derek Thornton did. Askew now is a transfer at Texas, and I think he expected to walk right into the lineup there until Marcus Carr decided to walk right into the lineup there ahead of him. But I actually think it's probably better for Askew that he's not, because I don't think he's any more ready to run a Texas team that has Final Four ambitions than he was to run Kentucky a year ago. Whatever, what you want and what you're capable of doing are two different things. And so it's good that Christian has a couple of guards ahead of him. And so anything he delivers right now is a bonus. And that's not to say he can't climb ahead of the players that are higher than him on the depth chart. He certainly has a lot of ability, but there's no rush now. A year ago, there was a little bit of a rush because they were struggling with the schedule and with the team they had. Now, I mean, if he can contribute, great. If it takes a little while for him to get there, okay, they can live with that. They've got guys. But if he can be the dynamic playmaker that he is, then he, I think that there's a role for him. I do think that he can find a role on this team if he's ready to do the kinds of things he did against Louisiana.
Sometimes it can work, Mike, too, on the back end. And I'll give you an example of a guy who enrolled early that I covered, about 5-10 years ago, Scotty Wilbekin, who came in. Now, not much was asked of him, expect him, but he was a backup point guard, and he worked his way up. And by his senior year, he was SEC Player of the Year. Right. Because he had that development, and he was, as a 17-year-old, going up in practice against older guys. So, I think if a guy like Lander sticks it out and is a 4-year player, it could really benefit him by the time he's a senior in that regard.
Yeah, and, I think as well, I think if this continues on if the Louisiana game is the start of something, even if there's not an immediate, obvious, lineup position for him, I think he's good enough that he can beat out guys. I think he's talented enough that he can fight his way ahead of guys if he continues to perform like he did in the Louisiana game. That I don't think he needs to look elsewhere to find opportunity. I think he's good enough, talent enough to create the opportunity in his current circumstance.
Mike, what do you have coming up next or out now that the people need to make sure they go read?
Yeah, I advanced the Gonzaga UCLA game with an article about Peyton Watson, who's a one-and-done player without a one-and-done attitude. Not concerned about how many minutes, how many shots. Wants to be a significant part of a team that perhaps hangs another banner in Pauley Pavilion. Not that they need one, They certainly have enough, but there's always room for one more, as they say. And so I really a terrific interview that I had with him. Very impressive young man. And that will be up this morning. So you can look for that. And if you didn't see my piece, I think we talked about it last week about the ACL doc, who's accelerated the process. That's been up for, I think it was posted last Wednesday or Thursday. So that's up there now. And it's a really interesting read. The idea that maybe you don't have to be out a year when you come, when you come down with an ACL tear. Maybe there's another way for you, to get back quicker. And that, the doctor explained his technique, and some of the patients of his explained their rapid rehabilitation. And so it was an interesting piece if you haven't gotten a chance to read it yet.
Absolutely. Make sure you do. Anything that Mike writes is worth reading. Mike, I can't thank you enough, man, as always.
Thanks, Jim and Kevin. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.
Happy Thanksgiving. That's right. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family as well. The great Mike DeCourcy joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Plenty more coming up, and we've got it for you after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
If you're in the market.
Oh, man, I can't find that article of Mike's on that. I would really want to read that.
What do you say it was called or about?
There's a doctor that is a procedure that can speed up the recovery time.
Oh, yeah. He mentioned that last week, too.
ACL.
Remember, we're open here, and then we'll have chronic at 9:50.
Okay.
Gonzaga UCLA.
It's weird that the two top teams in the country right now are West Coast teams. I don't know how often that happens.
Not very often. They can make Gonzaga number one all they want.
I personally I don't think Gonzaga will blow UCLA out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they beat them handily tonight. I think UCLA could be one of the top teams, but I don't know that they're on Gonzaga's level just yet.
They're gritty.
I was going to say tonight will be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
See if
It's a late game too, man.
So that's the thing about them West Coast, man. It's not like they're playing out here. They're playing closer to here in Vegas. It's not like they're playing in California or Washington, but that is where Gonzaga is, right? In Washington.
Yeah,
that is
Spokane.
Correct. Spokane. Spokane.
How long has Mark Few been with them now? Like 15 years?
No idea. It's maybe not that long, but maybe.
All right, go ahead and bring us back in.
Home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty at cheryl@indyhomepros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@indyhomepros.com. This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Hope you're having a good day. Another nice one out there. Sun shining. It's all that matters. Robert, the Truth Carters thinks North Carolina is overrated. Well, they always are, unless they're not.
Hubert Davis.
Matt Allen asks, is anyone eating at Southern Stone? How's the food? Oh, yeah, it's terrific. I'm telling you, it is absolutely spectacular. I can tell you this. They have a fried chicken that has this brine on it that is amazing. It is the best. And I never eat those I never eat tenderloins because they usually make them so big they're like a hubcap. This one's not. It's thicker and it's more flavorful. It's amazing. It's the best I've ever had, hands down, without question. The food is amazing. It's at the corner of Patterson and Rogers. It was a different restaurant prior, but absolutely spectacular. It's just not on the square. It's just not right on the beaten path in Bloomington is all. But thanks for asking, Matt. Music Man says that Mark Few has been the head coach of Gonzaga since 1999. There you go.
Yep.
22 years. So he's not going anywhere soon.
Be set for stability. I mean, I think that's in any sport too. I mean, if you're good, if you're successful. And he replaced Dan Monson, I think, who went to Minnesota and that didn't work out. And I wonder what Dan Monson is thinking now. You know, it's kind of interesting that Mark Few has really built that up and made them into perennial national power. And something to be said for his coaching ability and his ability to build a program too.
Whiskey is a 12.5-point underdog to number 12 Houston, Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars, 4-0 Houston Cougars, I might add. That's in the Maui Invitational.
Yeah, Wisconsin beat Texas A&M last night, which was a half-decent win. Buzz Williams is doing some good things down there. So
yes,
Indiana goes to Wisconsin December 8th. That's one of the December Big Ten games. You know, them in Minnesota, so that'll be a big, good early test.
And one of the few early season Big Ten wins, I guess you'd say, a nice win for the Big Ten.
Yeah, Ohio State beat Seton Hall last night also, so that was a good bounce back win for them after they lost to Xavier.
The Georgia Bulldogs take on Northwestern. So good that there's no line for that game that I see, at least not on this.
Tom Crean. He's building a program.
Yeah.
That's what the guy up north said. You know, he's building a program.
Yeah. And maybe a community instead. Jackson State, of course, travels to Indiana. 0-4 Jackson State traveling to 4-0 Indiana, who the Hoosiers are a 22.5-point favorite in that game.
It was 0-4 and they beat Rutgers. So, you know, you got to be careful. Mike Woodson said that, I don't know if you saw his show yesterday. Dane Fife was really good. He was pretty funny.
I'm normally at those. I had to travel to spend last evening with my daughter, so I missed last night's coach's show.
Dane had a great line that I posted on Twitter, and of course, you know, Don Fisher does a great job, obviously, with the radio show. But he was talking about Mike Woodson, and he said if he could get Carmelo to play defense, he goes, he could get these dang kids to cut down on their 27 turnovers that they had against Jackson State. So
we'll talk more about that. I think that was somewhat of an anomaly. The Illini, number 14, Illini, kind of falling. They take on Kansas State tonight in the Hall of Fame Classic at 7:00 on ESPN. They're kind of disjointed. Mike talked about that with Kofi. They're not they haven't gelled yet.
They have not gelled yet. I think that, like you said, Curbelo is a guy who is he's someone that like I said, the point guard position is somewhat new to him. I think and stepping into that role, I think that's been the big issue there at the point guard play.
Absolutely. Tennessee State travels to Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers. Those are the Big Ten games. Last night, of course, there were plenty more. As you said, Wisconsin with a nice win over Texas A&M 69-58. Ohio State with a better win over number 21 Seton Hall, 79-76. But the Illini, man, they got crushed by Cincinnati, 71-51. Just not in that game, really.
Yeah, no, not at all. And like I said, it's just one of those games where, didn't work out, didn't show up.
Penn State got a win as they squeak out 185-74 over the Cornell Big Red, but the Lafayette Leopards beat Rutgers 53-51 in a battle of, I bet you there wasn't a lot of defense. It was just offensive ineptitude, maybe. Iowa with a gigantic 109-61 win over the Broncos of Western Michigan. And Providence, the Friars, beat Northwestern in the Legends Classic, 77-72, of course. Al Durham with Providence. Tonight, they take on Virginia and Armand Franklin. So a little irony there. A couple former Hoosiers, Al Durham and Armand Franklin, facing off tonight as Providence takes on Virginia.
The battle of last year's starting backcourt for Indiana. So
there you go.
That's pretty interesting for sure. But Rutgers, I think losing Miles Johnson and Jacob Young, I think is starting to hurt him now. I thought with Harper and Geo Baker back there would be good, but they just don't seem complete. And those were, two of their top 6 rotation players, and it's really hurting them. And they're having issues scoring the basketball a little bit offensively. So, like I said, a chance for Indiana to jump a little bit here in the rankings and in the Big Ten standings with some of these other Big Ten teams struggling. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Of course, teams can come together in January and February. A lot can happen between now and then.
We were talking about the Ohio State or the Seton Hall game. Meechie Johnson hit the game-winning shot.
Yeah.
You know what he has in common with Christian Lander?
What?
Left school early.
Yeah. Early enrollee.
Early enrollee. And I know a lot of people gave a lot of grief over that. And I think in a normal situation, I would have agreed. But last year was the smart thing to do. Maybe it would have been better if it hadn't have been with Archie Miller. But the fact that it was a COVID year, I will continue to say that Christian Lander did the right thing by going ahead and coming to IU a year early. What was he going to gain in high school? Not much. I mean, because it was a COVID year, he didn't lose anything. He got training, and I'm not talking about Archie, but I'm talking about just the weightlifting, just the acclimation to college, the acclimation to the game, all that. So Christian Lander basically got a free year of getting to get that stuff and learn it. Even though you're not quite ready for it, he got to learn it here. Because to me, it's showing on the court now that he is a little stronger, that he is bigger. He's as quick with the ball as anybody on that team. As long as he learns to control it, not turn it over, he's going to be wicked at the point guard, and he's going to be tough because you're going to have to worry about him getting around you every damn time he comes up the court, not just what he can or who he's going to get the ball to.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see when Rob Finney gets healthy, how they give you the minutes and what they do. And does Lander jump Finney in the rotation, or how do you do that? I think there's obviously still a place for Rob too, and maybe even more off the ball, which they've been doing because they've been playing Xavier and Rob together too. But you can never have enough guards, particularly in Big Ten play. So this only kind of solidifies the depth a little bit that you have in that position with 3 guys that are capable of playing the point. But I don't think you necessarily have to always play Finney at the point. I don't think you necessarily always have to play even Xavier Johnson or Lander. You can kind of rotate them off the ball a little bit and give Parker Stewart a little bit of a blow.
Yeah, and how about Parker Stewart? I talked about him a little bit. Getting out of that just behind the 3-point arc game, it was, I think, magical for him. Opened up some things, Just he's a pure shooter. He's a nice little pure shooter. I'm not gonna say Pat Gramish yet, but man, he's got a nice smooth stroke. But needs to get a few of those more off. But getting those elbow jumpers off that he did, that helps in a lot of ways. Helps his confidence, but it also helps loosen the offense. Now you've got to account for him everywhere he goes. And that's why it's so important that's why Mike Woodson wants Trace Jackson Davis hitting that 15-foot elbow jumper. You have to account for them everywhere they are. That's why he wants, and I know some people go nuts, but that's why he wants Race Thompson taking those 3-point shots, because they want those defenses to account for every player at all times. Now, Michael Durr, I'm not sure you're ready to start cracking those threes up like you did the other night, especially that early in the damn shot clock. That was just dumb. That was just not knowing. He's like, wow, I'm open. I'm taking it. Dude, there was 20 seconds on the shot clock or something. No.
You can hear the collective groan in Simon Scott Assembly Hall with that, which was interesting. But, I think what you have potentially in Kopp and Parker Stewart, what we saw yesterday, I think what Indiana's been missing, because don't forget, they have not only been one of the lowest percentage three-point shooting percentage teams in the Big Ten, they've also been one of the lowest in terms of makes. And what you have, I think, in a guy like Parker Stewart is a guy that can get on a shooter's roll. They can hit 3 or 4 in a row, which is something that's really been lacking with this team, at least the first 2 years that I've been covering them. And Miller Kopp maybe the same way too.
Matt said last night he had 4 straight unders total points in college basketball. Talk betting. We'll do that after Chronic, because thanks for passing the tips along, Matt. Man, I didn't get those. Just kidding. Let's see. Yeah, Chronic will be joining us here shortly. And Five Lefts mentions that Parker Stewart plays hard on the defensive end as well. I think pretty much everyone plays hard on the defensive end, and he's more effective, obviously. But it's great to see guys get minutes, especially in this last game. And I know it was a blowout, and Mike Woodson was smart enough to do it, but able to do it. Get minutes to guys, a lot of minutes to guys who normally aren't getting those. Christian Lander was one of those that we talked about. But seriously, when we're talking about a guy that last year you wouldn't have put on the floor. You were afraid to put on the floor. He just played the second most minutes in a game. That's from then to now. That's a remarkable transition. Remarkable to me.
No question. And I think too that, but you've got to build that kind of a lead to get those players in there too. And I think that's part of what Indiana was able to do. Now tonight against Jackson State, you go out, you take care of business, and then you have that last 10 or 15 minutes to play with different combinations and different rotations and see what works and what doesn't.
And that's another thing that Mike Woodson is getting the opportunity to do just that. Of course, when you have the injuries that you have, and Miller Kopp ended up playing the most minutes the other night, surprisingly, but he's a guy that you can leave in there with confidence, because he may not do a lot, but he's not going to hurt you. He's smart. He's a veteran. He's kind of a calming influence out there. And that's probably a guy that you don't mind having out there with 3 or 4 younger guys.
Yeah. And I think Miller, like I said, he's a guy that he can get on a little roll. I think he's shown that he's capable of doing that from his days at Northwestern. And I do like too that he can hit some of those floaters, some of those mid-range shots as well. He wasn't just shooting from 3.
Steve, commenting also that Christian Lander is going to be really good. Thinks he dribbles a little bit too much before passing if nothing is open, but he has a chance to be great with Bates. That's dribbling is better than picking the ball up and getting trapped, as long as you're not trapping yourself. But all that stuff comes with experience, and he's getting that. You have to have minutes on the floor, man. It's all about getting minutes on the floor. So that's that. Hey, man, let's see. I guess we can go ahead and take a quick break. Coming up next, Chronic Hoosier is going to join us. Don't forget our friends down if you're in Southern Indiana and Clarksville area. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, and beer. Looking forward to stopping in and having some of that soon. Can't wait. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration.
Hello, Chronic.
What's going on, gentlemen?
Hey, Chronic, you're missing your logo. I don't know if you know that.
My logo?
Your Bob Knight logo?
Your face, your
your
avatar.
There you go. Your avatar.
Yeah, I don't know. StreamYard's been doing weird stuff to me today. It kicked me out earlier, which is not uncommon, but it's just very randomly timed out a couple of times. So if I drop you, I'll be right back.
Appreciate you joining us with the new time as well, too. Thanks for adjusting that for us.
Hey, new time's the old time. No worries.
Ironically, Mike DeCourcy has an article out about a guy. It's too late for you, of course, but is doing ACL surgeries that get you back even faster.
I saw that. He was talking about that right before I jumped on last week, and I ended up digging that up. He's got some funky putty with like bone cells and stem cells that he puts in the port that they have to drill. They drill a hole in your tibia and in your femur, and then they run the ligament into those and then anchor it. And I guess that mixture is what's allowing the tissue to bond faster. But as I just learned, because I got green lighted last Friday, I'm clear to run. Yeah.
Cleared.
Well, I told him, he said, you're clear to run now. And I was like, that's fine. You can prescribe me a bear that'll chase me around, but otherwise you're probably going to stick to the bike for a little bit.
Are you going to West Lafayette? He's cleared. They may need him.
I tell you, but no, he said, the crazy thing about the recovery is I've got the tissue in there, but where this procedure that Mike was writing about, where it makes such a huge leap, your body has to reteach that tissue what it needs to be, even though it was a ligament before, and it's still technically a ligament when they insert it. Your body has to absorb it and then program it to be an ACL. And that stem cell mixed with the bone paste apparently just makes that go super, super quick. Because otherwise, I'm 3 months out, and he says it could still be another 6 to 9 months before my body fully turns that into my own ligament. So crazy stuff. But it's amazing just how quickly I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these advancements now. We've kind of had a period of station for a long, long time. And there's just so much technology and so much knowledge, but there's so much more information and the ability to share it and expand it. It's crazy, the medical power we're about to unlock here in the next decade. Mark my words.
Here we go.
Now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the golf club at Eagle Point Studios, of course. Just talking off mic with Chronic Hoosier, who has been cleared from his ACL injury, about the piece that Mike DeCourcy wrote and that we were talking about earlier. You read up on that, Chronic.
Yeah, I did. It's fascinating. It was really, really cool how they're doing that and what they're able to accomplish with it. And, like we were talking about last week, it's, the procedure's already made, huge advancements from where it was just a couple of decades ago. You used to pretty much be a completely different person after that. And now, it's fairly commonplace and athletes are able to recover pretty much fully and pretty much within a year or less. And now this is talking about accelerating that even more. Guys that can be back on the court in 2-3 months when they put the stem cells and the bone paste in those ports they drill. Crazy stuff. But, it's one of those things where it still could be a couple years away from being widely accepted and implemented. But huge progress on the horizon for athletes, because it's unfortunately it's all too common of an injury. It's the most imperfect joint in the human body, and the more we push it, the earlier these kids are pushing it in their careers, and the more strain and the load they carry, that could be a huge game changer going forward.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers. I would wonder where. I know it's high, but the ACL has to be one of the most common injuries in sport, because it affects so many. It doesn't matter if it's basketball, football, especially, but it really it's one of those injuries when you hear, you're like, oh damn. But it's just one of those the probably the toughest, other than the Achilles, which is not as common but way more difficult to come back from. But the ACL is just very common injury.
Yeah, it's like I said, it is a terrible joint for how we use it. We weren't meant to be. The human body didn't evolve to be bipeds, at least physiologically. We evolved that way as a matter of necessity, as the species came out of the trees. But we tear it up way too easy, and it's unfortunate. But it's promising to see, both where the technology is right now. The basic middle of the road that I got. I feel awesome, man. I'm literally 3 months out, and I'm ready to go fight God or become him. I feel great. I feel strong as I ever have. But I'm still sidelined. I can't snow ski till next year. You don't want me playing pickup ball until next summer. So it's still a long road ahead. And to see stories of these guys getting back on the court 2-3 months after the injury is nothing short of amazing. So hopefully that continues to progress and it becomes widely available to a lot of people. But I think you're going to see a lot of that. You start seeing what the medical technology and the advancements, particularly in the area of stem cells and the way you can program these tissues to do whatever you need them to do. We're probably going to see a lot of things that were previously far more catastrophic becoming far more routine and easier to recover from.
So you won't be punking people out at the hyper anytime soon.
Man, I can still talk some game. I can still distribute the ball, but I'm kind of a straight line guy right now. Not a lot of cutting, not a lot of twisting. I'm not gonna lie, man. My top end speed's probably not going to get that much run on those first half courts over there at the hyper, but give me time. The big thing is confidence, and that's one of the unfortunate things with Michael Penix and his injuries. Is you got the sense before he went out, he was starting to get a little more confidence back in his leg. That's something I've battled at literally every step since the surgery. Is confidence, knowing that leg's going to be there underneath you solidly when you need it, and not having not being omnipresent in your mind. So. We may see him again perhaps this weekend for the bucket, maybe not. I'd be surprised if we do, seeing as there's very little to be gained other than a trophy that honestly, short of Mark Deal, I don't know that there's a lot of people out there that love beating Purdue as much as I do. And I'm not going to lie, man, I literally have no emotional energy left for this weekend for this team. It's just been so incredibly disappointing, so frustrating. Love to see him pull it out. I have zero confidence he's going to be able to do it.
That's funny you mentioned Mark Deal's name. His name came up yesterday in the Monday pressers. We were just in a group talking, and that very conversation came up. Did it not, Kevin? I mean,
I was the one that asked, did they bring the trophy or how did they transfer it?
That's what it was.
And they said that Deal is the one that hands it over, apparently, and he might begrudgingly be doing so.
He is the keeper of all the trophies. That man loves Indiana trophies more than perhaps any human on earth, with Ralph Green III being a close second, I would say.
Well, they said he'd hand it over, but sometimes he'd be surprised that sometimes other teams would just set it on the ground. Or one time, Michigan State didn't even bother to bring the brass spittoon for a game. So we'll see. But one thing, I think Grant Grimmel needs to start this game, Chronic. For 2 weeks in a row, he has looked comfortable throwing the ball. He's the only quarterback they have that has looked comfortable throwing the ball. And Tom Allen himself has said repeatedly that they have to be able to throw the ball. to have offense. Well, your only option is Grant Gremmel in my mind. He just looks comfortable. And afterwards, and after the game last week, when we were talking, someone else asked Grant about pressure, and we played this clip the other day. But John, if you have that clip, I just love this. Is a freaking walk-on that never in his wildest dreams imagined coming to a game and being able to throw a touchdown pass. But he not only has he done that for 2 weeks in a row, but he's done it in a way that he just looks like he was expecting it. He's calm, cool, and collected. But here's what he had to say when he was asked about the pressure of having to step up.
Pressure's fake. I don't believe in pressure. I mean, confidence or preparation creates confidence. Coach Allen preaches that all the time. Everyone preaches that, but I don't believe in pressure. It's all a mindset. So, I mean, if I start, I start. If Donovan starts, great. I mean, we're doing everything we can to win, so it doesn't matter.
And that came across very genuine. A lot of times you can hear guys say they can say whatever they want, and they generally do. That seemed just as matter of fact as possible. I mean, he seems very sincere. He's not bothered by it, man, and that's why I think he looks so comfortable out there.
Yeah, and I love the attitude. I love the mindset. It's an opportunity that never in a million years probably should have opened up in this particular season, but it did. And, honestly, there's really not a lot of options left for Indiana at this point. And, even assuming you had your full quarterback room available for the game Saturday, I guess to what end? What exactly is accomplished, particularly seeing where the line is right now at this point of the season and the production or the lack thereof that they've demonstrated. Whoever's under center is going to get lit up. They're going to take some big pops. And, in the event that you want to have, your guys, some of your best guys going into the offseason as healthy as possible. You've basically ran the white flag up on the offensive side of the ball for each of the last several weeks now. I guess my question is, why change course? Honest question. Why change course? Why risk the injuries to Penix, to Tuttle, to McCulley for that matter at this point? I think Donovan is a guy that could probably benefit from some more game action, some live snaps. I'd have zero problem whatsoever, even if everybody were healthy. Let Grant and Donovan just go out there and see what they can do, because quite honestly, it's been such a disappointment thus far. There's really not, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have the Bucket stay in Bloomington. I just don't know that it's worth continuing to put your guys in harm's way for a game that does literally zero else other than putting a 1 W in the column and keeping the Bucket in town, because there's really not much left else to play for other than pride at this point. And, even that's been sorely lacking here in the last couple of weeks.
Kevin, one thing I wonder is, having just predetermined who the hierarchy of the quarterbacks instead of really doing it through competition, because I think the decision was made long ago that Penix was 1, Tuttle was 2, Donovan was 3, Dexter Williams is out. So then that by de facto made Grant Gremmel 4. But I wonder if all these guys were given an equal chance, how that would have really came out. And I wonder if predisposed decisions affected this team this season.
Well, I don't know. I think Gremmel was always thought highly of because they alternated him with McCulley even in that Ohio State game. And Gremmel was kind of the throwing quarterback and McCulley was the running quarterback. And the only problem with that is, right, you become telegraphed to the defense by doing that. But Gremmel showed that he could scramble a little bit during that Minnesota game. He got out to the edge and so forth, and did a few runs here and there. But I do think that McCulley did throw for a freshman record against Maryland. Now it was a bad Maryland defense, but he did throw for 254 yards. Occasionally he can hit guys deep. His big problem is accuracy. That's a huge problem, and I don't know how. That's where they have to work with him, is being a more accurate thrower, because we saw plenty of those balls, and it starts sailing into the sidelines over the sidelines. where he's you can't be throwing 42% in college football. You got to be better than that. You got to be 50%.
Yeah, we'll find out this week as the Hoosiers travel up to West Lafayette to take on the Boilermakers. Basketball continues tonight as Indiana welcomes in Jackson State. That game tips off at, another 7 o'clock tip. BTN, you can catch the broadcast on there. Indiana is a 22.5-point favorite, Chronic.
Yeah, it should be pretty similar to what we saw, I feel like, last game, quite honestly. This is, by design, this is the cupcake portion of the schedule. We get quite a bit of them at the Hall here in the non-conference season. But, as we saw Sunday night, I think there's still a lot to be gained from these matchups right now for this particular team at this point in the season. As you guys were talking right before I jumped on, I thought it was a great opportunity to give that second line a lot of run and let them kind of show where they're at in this point in the season. One of those games I felt like was huge, as you just mentioned, for Christian Lander, but pretty much everybody else on the bench that's not currently starting right now. About the only guy that I felt like really struggled with his minutes and has kind of been a recurring theme is Michael Durr. Otherwise, I thought pretty much everybody else that trotted out there really made the most of it. Now, there's certainly a lot of turnovers that were well beyond what should be acceptable for this team against that type of an opponent. Continue to be pretty concerned by some of those rebound numbers. This is a team that's not shown to be particularly strong on the glass. And those are two things that could be really costly as the season goes on. But as I mentioned Sunday night after the game finished up, this is why you play tune-up games, to wrinkle out or to iron out those types of wrinkles and to get everybody tightened up a little bit. But usually in November, it's just letting the chemistry gel and seeing where everybody stands. And it looks like there's a lot of guys that made a lot of pretty big strides over the offseason who are poised to give Indiana some pretty solid contributions across the board. This looks like it's going to be one of the deeper teams Indiana's perhaps had in several years.
I hear you on the St. John's game. I thought Chronic was they expended so much energy, and particularly in the first half defensively, that I thought that they were a step slow on some of those defensive rebounds in the second half. And I do think that that's going to be a learning process too, because the 2 years with Archie the back line, they were so used to just kind of being stationary, and now they're really expending a lot of effort. And I think sometimes we saw in the Eastern Michigan game and we saw in the St. John's game that it's catching up to them a little bit in the second half, and that's something that they're going to have to continue to work through from a conditioning standpoint, from a depth standpoint, rotating in different guys. But I think they can shore that up if they can learn to sustain that energy level for a full 40 minutes.
Yeah, it reminds me of my rehab. They got me doing squats now and lunges and some pretty heavy leg work. And it's amazing how much better my first set is than my second set. And when I jump in that squat cage, it's hard work. It's really hard work. And it's going to be hard work. And, Indiana's second half, yes, they're getting the weight up, just not quite with the gusto that you see in that first half. And it's going to be something that they've got to work on, because they're playing some phenomenal defense right now. Pomeroy shows they are currently leading the country in effective field goal defense. And again, it's a small sample set. It's early in the season, but that's pretty notable. They're leading the nation in 2-point defense percentage-wise. Excuse me. That's hard work, man. I've said this for years. I'll say it till I go to the grave. Playing good defense is hard work. If it were easy, every team would play good defense. The fact of the matter is, it's hard work, and this team's really getting after it on the defensive end right now. And that's probably the most remarkable component of what's their identity right now. They're going to get after you on the defensive end of the floor. They may not be that tough on the glass. They may not be that tight with the handles so far, but this is a team that's going to get after it. You don't see that big of a drop off as they get through the rotation. That's a great place to start. That's a great foundation to build a program on. But they've got to figure out a way to keep that intensity, that focus up in the second half. And part of it too, when you've got a double-digit lead, 20 points, whatever it may be, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to kind of let your foot off the gas a little bit and try to cruise to the finish line. And that you may get away with that against the Jackson States, against the Louisiana Lafayette's of the world. That's not going to cut it though once Big Ten season starts.
Is it true that Mike Woodson is the first IU coach to go 4-0 in his first season since Bob Knight?
I'd have to look that up, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I would too. I don't have my book handy here because I'm just looking at something. I'm like, that just sounds crazy. With a lot of times the schedules that you can have, a lot of times your early season schedule is pretty easy. That just seems a little shocking. But you only get one first year, and there's not that many of those guys. So Tom Crean didn't have that luxury. So we know Archie didn't. So
yeah,
because he lost his very damn first game, got killed. So then you go back to Kelvin Sampson. So
he lost his second game at Butler. IU fell 60-55 in game 2 of the Kelvin Sampson era.
And that leaves Mike Davis, and I'd have to pull that. So obviously he must have lost one. So wow, so there's a little bit of that's surprising to me, but there you go. So, and I expect him to go. Actually, they're going to go 6-0 easily. I think, but then that's before the Syracuse game. That's when the Syracuse game comes, and Syracuse has not looked that good. To be honest with you, it doesn't mean anything because they're going to have to go on the road, Indiana, and Syracuse has more games to get better, and that's what you do right now. You just get better. But Indiana has an opportunity to really win a bunch of games here without losing up into the Big Ten schedule, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that Syracuse game looks a whole lot more it looks a whole lot more attainable than perhaps it did at the start of the season. Syracuse fresh off a 15-point home loss against Colgate this weekend, last Saturday, in a bye game. Let Colgate hang 100 on them in the Carrier Dome, which is pretty much unheard of in the Jim Boeheim era for that type of result. I had zero idea what Colgate brings to the table, but I saw that come across the ticker, and that certainly raised some eyebrows. Pomeroy's now got that projecting a 1-point Syracuse win, gives Indiana 47% chance. With Indiana's defense right now, and Syracuse lack thereof at this point in the season, Indiana's got a pretty decent chance to run the table in the non-conference schedule. We'll see when that comes, but we get a little bit of a break here after this week, or after tonight, before that opportunity is going to present itself. I'm sorry. I guess we got Marshall on Saturday still. I forgot about that one. But no, it's certainly open. There's a path where you may very well see, especially if Indiana's able to pull that one out. My guess is Indiana cracks the top 25 if they can win up in Syracuse.
I do the Marshall Blue Ribbon preview for Blue Ribbon Magazine every year, and there's a very interesting guy they have, and remember this name on Saturday after the bucket game, named Tavion Kinsey. This kid is a really nice combo guard, really nice player who's got an NBA future. That's going to be very interesting on Saturday. And they play up tempo. They're going to press. They're going to get after it a little bit with Dan D'Antoni. That might be a sneaky tough game, and I don't think it's a game that you want to necessarily like a trap game because you're preparing for Syracuse. But I think Marshall might be able to give Indiana a little bit of a game on Saturday night. That's going to be my prediction because they are well coached. Dan D'Antoni is Mike D'Antoni's older brother. They've been to the tournament. They're one of those sneaky Conference USA teams, and we saw North Texas beat Purdue. I would not take them lightly. Let's put it that way.
There you go. There's the advice. So don't bet against them. Let's see. Chronic, what's coming up next for you, my friend?
Oh, it's a big week, man. It's a big week. Obviously, you got the holidays coming in. We did Thanksgiving at my family's farm here this Sunday, so I wasn't able to make it back to the hall. Wasn't able to make it to Armstrong for the second round of the NCAA soccer. But we got Friendsgiving tonight. I just picked up
we lost him.
Something cut out.
He's still there, but we lost him.
We
He
got
picked up He picked up the good stuff is what he was just getting ready to let us know all the good stuff that he picked up. I don't know if it was going to be alcohol. There he is. He's back. You were getting ready to let us know all the good stuff you picked up. I don't know if it was alcohol related or food.
I'll tell you what, man, I'm that dude. I'm at Kroger this morning at 7:25 in the morning, and it's just chilly. I'm running around there in flip-flops and shorts, and all these people are, stuffing their carts full of all the Thanksgiving.
You know what? I'm picturing the dude right now in the Big Lebowski in his robe, walking in and drinking the milk or smelling the milk to make sure it was still good before he bought it at the store.
No, man, I just got done doing I do a quick 30-minute cycling set every morning before I jump in the shower and head to work. So I just jumped off the bike and I made a quick dip over to grab some dry cleaning. And I'm walking around Kroger and everybody's getting, their stuffing and their turkeys and all the veggies. And I got 12 pounds of crab legs and a handle of Jameson. So we're doing Friendsgiving tonight. I'm looking forward to that one. People don't realize this, man. In the original Thanksgiving, we only celebrate with turkey because the Indians want the Pilgrims to know that the real bounty is crawling along the rocks at the seashore right there. It's the crabs, man. That's how you got to do it.
Man, that sounds like a wonderful evening. I've got to tell you.
If you have Jameson, I'm coming over.
Crab legs.
That's one thing I will always have.
Yes, but he had me at crab legs. I'm Irish, but I'll go to the crab legs first. I gotta tell you, I love me some crab legs.
Looking forward to that tonight, and then we get to go ahead and do the full Thanksgiving proper on Thursday, and then it's going to be a big weekend on campus. Everybody's gone, obviously, with the students out over break, but it's one of those wonderful times of the year where the townies come down from the hills and everybody's out and about, and parking is no longer a problem. And, it's my favorite time at the hall this week. And then the Christmas break period, get a chance to see a lot of families that don't normally get the opportunity to make it in and get to experience that. And that's always it's a different energy, but it's a fun energy because those are a lot of real passionate fans that make their way in over these breaks. So a lot of families have people come back in town as well. So looking forward to taking part in some of that this weekend as well with some of our friends and families. And, NCAA soccer, Hoosier's going to be on the road at Seattle this weekend for a chance to make it to the Elite Eight, playing the 2-seed Huskies. So big weekend all around Indiana and Bloomington this weekend.
Absolutely, brother. Appreciate you so much. Chronic Hoosier brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. If you're looking for the deals, they've got them. $0 down, 0% APR, all kinds of deals for you there. And they're helping out breast cancer. We've got lots more to finish it up. Back with it here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration or
I got the players at 1:30 today.
Jim, if you need something to talk about, you were
Who
going
do
to
they
talk
have,
about gambling last
Kevin?
time.
Hold on. Who do they have, Kevin?
I think it's going to be Hendershot, McFadden, and I forget the third captain. Freifogel's not going to be there because he's got something going on.
I don't know. Well, hopefully I can make it.
1:30 in the afternoon. So.
I know, but I've got to be somewhere at 11:45, 12:45. That should allow me 1:30 at the where?
At the team room.
Same place.
Yeah.
Oh, the team room.
Yeah. Downstairs. Yeah. They let you in.
I'm going to have a golf event next year.
The Indiana Sports Beat golf event.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad idea.
Well, there's a lot of golfers on here. Plus, you can reach them other ways as well.
Oh, do we want to remind people about the ticket giveaway? Have people reached out to you about that?
Yeah, the winner, Brian Carroll.
Okay. You can announce that on air too. I know technically we're over YouTube right now, but
I got to figure out how to do it. Where is that? Did I get those down?
you have about 10 minutes in this last segment. Here we go.
Kevin, what do you got?
Oh, what?
Kevin, what do you got?
What coming up?
Yep.
The Big Ten column today about Michigan, Ohio State,
10 seconds.
and bucket coverage. I'll be at the bucket game.
We're not on the station where you live. We should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers with me now.
Looking at the Syracuse schedule here, and because obviously they suffered that 100-85 loss at Colgate, which was interesting. But they're going to be in the Bahamas this weekend. They're in the battle for Atlantis, and they start with VCU, and then they have 2 other games to be determined. So they will be coming back from the sunshine of the Bahamas when they face Indiana. Perhaps a little battle tested from that tournament, but still, that's going to be interesting, and they certainly look a lot more vulnerable than maybe you thought coming into the season.
Yeah, Indiana's still going to be facing a defense that they haven't really seen, but the shooting in the last game kind of brightens that up. Also, the quickness of the guards, whether you're talking about Xavier or Christian Lander, getting in to break that zone apart a little bit, and Indiana having the ability to do that with multiple guys. You don't have Rob Finney, you lose him a little bit, but you've got other guys that can do that. Tamar Bates. So I think that's going to be less of an issue for Indiana, but we'll see.
So Woodson talked about on his radio show, and I wrote about it, that he's not 100% satisfied with the point guard play. He still wants it elevated. Obviously, they combined for 8 turnovers. Xavier Johnson is fouling, and he said that that's going to be the key to everything. If you can get the level of point play where it's closer to elite, he says that's going to do a lot for this team going forward in terms of their aspirations to contend for a Big Ten title. You need that consistent point guard play. And listen, part of it is Xavier Johnson. I mean, he came in with that reputation, and we've already seen it. He gets into it with other guys from time to time. He's an aggressive player, but you got to be smart too, because you're doing your team no good sitting on the bench with 2 fouls in the first half, which is what's happened the last 2 games. He's just got to play a little bit smarter, a little bit more under control in those situations, and and let his talent shine, and give him a chance to be out there 12 to 15 minutes in the first half, especially with Finney out now too. But Lander did a nice job stepping up against Louisiana. You got to give him credit. Hopefully he builds off that too.
Yeah, I was trying to look in the information that we get from JD each week. Does he have the one thing they don't have? They don't have the cumulative stats for the year, do they?
No, they do. Yeah, or in the link, but. I think the thing with Xavier, it's been the last 2 games he's only averaged 5.5 and 3.5 assists, and that's because he's been in foul trouble. And that's the key. You can't be productive if you're not on the floor. And he's only averaged 17 minutes in those 2 games, the last 2 games against St. John's and against Louisiana. So, and in Louisiana, to give him the benefit of doubt in the second half, once it was a blowout, they took him out. Which is Jordan Geronimo, another guy, 4 fouls, 5 turnovers, great athlete, but missed a few dunks too. But he's a guy that he's got so much ability, and he's a good, really, good defender. And obviously, he and Tamar Bates came up with that huge defensive play at the end. And we probably haven't talked about enough about Tamar Bates too, as a 6-man, as an instant offense guy off the bench. I mean, he's been terrific. Just what he's provided consistently in terms of offense coming in. And if Kopp is struggling early.
Yeah, I wonder if there was something else that kind of stood out to me. Of the 4 walk-ons, Nathan Childress, who was from Zionsville, was the only one that got in.
Made a 3.
And played kind of well. That was his first career IU basket, that 3-pointer. He also had a career high 4 rebounds in the minutes that he got to play. So
who looks confident and has been productive in very limited minutes and is Anthony Leal. Has looked good to me. Like, he looks like he's really but there must be just so much competition. But every time I see him come in the game, he has played reasonably well. He's hit threes. He's run the floor really well at the end of the first half with Lander. I mean, he's another guy, and he's a former Mr. Basketball, so we know he has got ability. But right now it might be a numbers game with him. But Woodson said on his radio show last night, all 13 guys have to be ready to play, and if your number is called, it's your opportunity to be productive. I think Leal has shown to me, even in his garbage time minutes, that he looks like he's a better player compared to last year as well.
Offensively, but what about defensively? I think that he still may lack a step. That you're not going to have Anthony on the floor if the game is on the line from a defensive standpoint. Offensively, it doesn't scare you, like you said. He does look comfortable. He looks completely like he's, just playing another game. But defensively,
you want to know what? Miller Kopp's a liability defensively too. And if Leal could show that he could hit shots, why not step into that role a little bit? And Miller's more of a veteran, maybe not even a starting role, but get some minutes, as a guy that you can bring in as a shooter, hit a few shots. But we'll see. We will see. It's such a long season. So many things can happen. Injuries can happen. Look, this injury to Finney opened up the door for Lander.
Absolutely, it does.
And he took advantage of it last night, and we'll see if he continues to take advantage of it.
Now, Jordan Geronimo is he just has to get better. He is such a raw player. Todd Leary calls him the OG of this team, and he is absolutely that. Like OG Anunoby, who is just great wingspan. But he's a better athlete than OG, but he's not as skilled basketball wise yet, especially offensively.
Leap. Yeah, 40-inch vertical leap, but got to finish those dunks though too. If he can get up there and he wants to be emphatic with it, I get it. But
he could have been in double digit scoring easily.
Yeah, he missed 2 dunks in that game. But it is what it is, and sometimes that's going to happen when you try to throw it down really hard. But no, he's Jordan is a guy, but I think he made his bones even last year. Remember when he defended Luka Garza in that game up in Iowa? He's such a good athlete. He's a good defender. Mike Woodson likes that, values that, his athletic ability on the defensive end. He just has to refine something.
Let's see. Right now, you've got Trace Jackson Davis averaging 17 points a game. And that's 2 points under last year, exactly what I thought it'd be, because you've got more help now being spread around. So tonight's game, of course, Indiana taking on Jackson State as they look to go 5-0, and Mike Woodson looking to become. We'll have to see if Bob Knight went 5-0. How far that streak goes. We'll have to check on that. But another great fun day. Thanks to Chronic Hoosier, of course, and the great Mike DeCourcy from BTN and Fox and the Sporting News. Make sure you go check out his columns, especially you've got the one on the ACL, which is a cool story, and then he's got more coming up. But Kevin as well, he's got plenty of things out in regards to the preview of tonight game and the coverage as well with the CNHI papers, and of course the Hoosier.com. Indiana Rivals for complete coverage there with Alec Lasley and the crew. I'll be there tonight. We'll have, I think, Charlie Miller, and we'll see what other guests we can get for the post-game show. So more coming up. So until tonight, I'm Jim Coyle for Kevin Brockway and John, the producer. Thanks to you guys, more importantly, because without you, we wouldn't be here. But until tonight, I will see you on the radio.